If absolute happiness could be bottled, I would have an infinite stock of that year. The year I married Michael, the year our life in Portland, Oregon, felt like an indie movie script. The air smelled of pine and fresh coffee, and the future was an open road, bathed in the golden light of sunset. I was 28, with brown eyes full of dreams and a heart that believed in modern fairy tales. Michael, at 30, was my prince. Not the shining armor type, but the real kind, with a smile that calmed my storms and steady hands that promised safety. He was my true north, my safe harbor, the embodiment of stability in a chaotic world. At least that's what I believed. Memory today is a traitor. It paints the past with vibrant colors, hiding the cracks in the canvas, the dark shades I refuse to see. Our life together was already full, but it became extraordinary when Liam and Sarah entered it. They lived in the apartment across from ours, in the same red brick building that creaked with the winter rains. Our meeting was a cliché, a Saturday afternoon when I helped Sarah carry her groceries up the stairs. She had the most infectious laugh I had ever heard, and an energy that filled any room. Liam, her husband, was the perfect complement, an amateur comedian with a heart of gold, who became the brother Michael never had. In weeks, we were inseparable. Our apartments became extensions of each other. Friday nights were sacred: cheap pizza, bottled wine, and board games that invariably ended in laughter and accusations of cheating. Sarah and I shared secrets whispered on the couch, while Michael and Liam debated sports on the balcony, their silhouettes framed against the city's glow. We were young, in love, and had the naive certainty that this bubble of happiness would last forever. They weren't just friends. They were the family we had chosen, the witnesses to our love story, the cornerstones of our perfect little world. I vividly remember our last night together, an impromptu barbecue in the building's common area to celebrate a small promotion Liam had received. The smell of meat on the grill, pop music playing from a small speaker, and the warmth of the Oregon summer. Sarah hugged me tightly as she said goodbye, saying, "See you on Saturday for our trip to the coast. Don't be late, Clara." I smiled and promised I wouldn't be. That night, as I lay next to Michael, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. He pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I love you." And I believed it, with every fiber of my being. Saturday arrived, but Sarah didn't answer my texts. I found it strange. I called, and the call went straight to voicemail. "They must have overslept," I said to Michael, trying to push away a pang of worry. He agreed, his eyes fixed on the TV. "They must be tired from yesterday's party. Relax, honey." But the hours passed, and the silence on the other end of the line became deafening. By the afternoon, anxiety was a fiery knot in my stomach. I went to their apartment and knocked on the door. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer, only the hollow echo of my hand against the wood. I pressed my ear to the door, hoping to hear a footstep, a voice, anything. Nothing. The silence was thick, unnatural. I returned to our apartment, my heart hammering in my chest. "Michael, something is wrong." He sighed, finally looking away from the screen. "Clara, you're overreacting. They're adults. They probably decided to do something else and forgot to tell us." His words were calm, rational, but they felt wrong, like a piece that didn't fit. By Monday, panic had set in. I called Liam's work. He hadn't shown up. Same with Sarah. They had vanished, evaporated. Without a word, without a message, without a goodbye. Our perfect world, built on laughter and promises, collapsed into an abyss of silence and confusion, leaving behind only one question that would haunt me for the next 3 years. 3 years. It feels like a lifetime, and at the same time, the blink of an eye. The calendar said that 1,095 days had passed since the barbecue, since Sarah's last hug, since the last promise of a trip that never happened. To the world, and especially to Michael, life had moved on. But for me, time had frozen on that weekend. I lived in a silent loop of pain and confusion. The absence of Liam and Sarah wasn't a void. It was a constant presence, a ghost that sat at the table with us at every dinner and lay in bed between me and my husband. In the first few months, my search was frantic. Hospitals, police stations, missing persons lists, not a single clue. They no longer existed in any official record. It was as if they had been erased from the world. Michael was patient at first, holding me while I cried, telling me we would find an answer. But his patience ran out, giving way to an irritable frustration that he barely bothered to hide. "Clara, that's enough," he would say, his voice harsh. They left us. For whatever selfish reason, they decided they didn't want to be our friends anymore. We need to accept it and move on. For us. The word us was his weapon and his shield. He used it to make me feel guilty, as if my pain was a betrayal of our marriage. A year after the disappearance, he suggested we move from Portland. "A fresh start," he said, with forced optimism. "Away from this apartment, away from these memories that are hurting you." Part of me knew he was just trying to run away, but the other part, the part exhausted from suffering, gave in. We moved to Seattle, to a modern house with huge windows and white walls that seemed to scream with how empty they were. I put away the photos. I hid the little gifts Sarah had given me. I tried, for Michael, to be the wife he wanted, the one who had moved on. But the night was my sanctuary for grief. While he slept, I would reopen the wounds, scrolling through old social media profiles, looking at the smiling faces, searching for a clue, an answer, anything that would make sense of the absurdity. Michael became an expert at dodging the subject. If I mentioned Liam or Sarah's name, he would change the topic or simply leave the room. The man who was once my confidant had built a wall between us, and our friends' names were the only inscription on the bricks. And then, on a rainy Tuesday, the universe decided that the silence had gone on long enough. I was in line at a bank in downtown Seattle, an impersonal and anonymous place, feeling the usual boredom of a routine errand. My mind was wandering, planning dinner, when a familiar laugh, lower and more restrained than I remembered, cut through the air. My body froze before my mind could process it. I turned my head slowly, as if in a dream. And there she was. Sarah. My heart leaped so violently I thought it would stop. She looked different. Her vibrant blonde hair was darker, tied back in a tight bun. There were deep dark circles under her eyes, and the infectious energy had been replaced by an aura of exhaustion and fear. She didn't see me. She was focused on a tense phone conversation. For a second, I was paralyzed. The fear that she would disappear again was overwhelming. But then, the pain of 3 years of unanswered questions flooded me, giving me a strength I didn't know I had. When she hung up the phone and turned to leave, I moved. I stood directly in her path. "Sarah?" The name came out of my mouth like a whisper, but it sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the bank. Her eyes met mine. The recognition was instant, followed by a wave of pure panic. Her face lost all color, becoming a pale mask of terror. She took a step back, trying to swerve, to flee, to disappear once more. But I didn't let her. I stepped forward, blocking her exit. My hands were shaking, but my voice, when I spoke again, was heavy with the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. "No, not this time. You're not running away. I deserve an answer." "Why, Sarah? For God's sake, why? If you're as anxious for answers as Clara is, don't forget to help our story reach more people. Leave a like to show your support, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the climax of this journey, and hit the notification bell to be the first to know what happens next. Your support is crucial. Now let's get back to the bank. The panic in Sarah's eyes was so intense that for a moment it overshadowed my own anguish. She glanced around at the bank's security guard, at the other customers, as if expecting sirens to start wailing at any moment. Her hand shot out and grabbed my arm, her icy fingers digging into my skin. "Clara, please not here," she whispered, her voice choked with dread. She pulled me, almost dragged me to a small hallway that led to the restrooms, a forgotten corner of the building. Only there, away from prying eyes, did she let go. She leaned against the wall, panting, and ran her hands through her hair in a way I had never seen her do before. This was not the confident Sarah I knew. This was a frightened stranger. "You don't understand," she repeated, shaking her head. "We never wanted to hurt you. We left because of you, to protect you." Confusion hit me like a wave. Protect me? Protect me from what? You abandoned me. You disappeared without a word. Do you have any idea what I went through? The words came out louder and harsher than I intended. "We saw something," she said, her voice low and trembling. "A news report. Liam saw it first, early one morning. He woke me up, pale as a ghost. We didn't believe it at first. We thought it was a mistake, a terrible mix-up. Seeing the question written all over my face, she stopped trying to explain with words. With her hands still shaking, she took out her phone. Her fingers fumbled across the screen, opening an app, then a hidden folder. She took a deep breath, like a diver about to leap from a cliff, and turned the screen to me. "We saved the video," she said, "so we would never forget why we left." And then, I saw it. The screen showed the logo of a Portland news channel, and the image that followed made the floor disappear from under my feet. It was the facade of Michael's old office, and walking out the glass door, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers, was him, my husband. His face, usually so calm and controlled, was tense, a mask of fury and humiliation. He was wearing the blue silk tie I had given him for his 30th birthday. My mind refused to accept it. It's a fake, a deep fake. It's not possible. But the reporter's voice began to speak, and every word was a nail in the coffin of my former life. Michael Thompson, a financial analyst seen as a rising star, was arrested today on charges of embezzling nearly $500,000 from the company in a complex wire fraud scheme. The air was stolen from my lungs. The sound of the bank around me turned into a distant, high-pitched hum. I could feel the blood draining from my face, my legs growing weak. The video continued, but I could no longer process the information. $500,000. Fraud. Arrest. The words echoed in my head, colliding with the memories I had of him. The man who held my hand at the movies, who made my breakfast, who promised to love me forever. How could that man be the same criminal in handcuffs on the phone screen? Sarah took the phone back, her expression now one of pure pity. "We saw that, Clara, and we freaked out. Liam said that if he was capable of doing that, we didn't know what else he might be capable of. We were scared of getting involved, scared for you. The only thing we could think to do was run. It was cowardly, I know. Oh God, Clara, forgive me. We were so cowardly." I barely heard her apology. I was trapped in the echo of the reporter's voice, in the image of my husband being treated like a criminal. The woman who walked into that bank no longer existed. In her place was a stranger, looking at the face of another stranger, discovering that her entire life, her entire love, was an elaborate and cruel lie. I don't remember saying goodbye to Sarah. I don't remember leaving the bank. My mind disconnected from my body, which moved on pure instinct, an automaton navigating the city. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and rain-slicked streets. The ringing in my ears hadn't subsided. It was the soundtrack to my world falling apart. Inside my head, however, the chaos began to organize itself. The truth Sarah had revealed wasn't just new information. It was a key that unlocked a dark cellar in my memory, a place full of puzzle pieces I never knew existed. And one by one, They began to fit together with a brutal, nauseating clarity. The business trip. About 2 months after Liam and Sarah disappeared, Michael announced he needed to be away for almost a month for an urgent project on the East Coast. I remember finding it strange, the spotty communication, his vague answers. When he returned, he was thinner, more tired, and there was a distance in his eyes that I attributed to stress. He said we had been separated temporarily during that period, a phrase that hurt me deeply, but which I accepted as a passing crisis. The truth now hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no business trip. That month was the period he was arrested, processed, the time he was fighting to stay out of jail. His separation from me wasn't emotional. It was literal, imposed by a justice system I had no idea about. The job loss. Shortly after his return, he came home saying he'd been laid off. A corporate restructuring, he said. Bad luck. I consoled him. I stood by his side. I cooked his favorite meals and told him we would get through it together. What a blatant lie. He wasn't a victim of the economy. He was fired for being a thief. And our move to Seattle? It wasn't a fresh start for us. It was an act of escape for him. He wasn't helping me escape bad memories. He was isolating me, tearing me away from a place where his reputation was in ruins, where the truth could easily reach my ears. Every time he got angry when I mentioned our friends, it wasn't because of my inability to move on. It was out of the terrifying fear that I would discover the real reason they fled. He wasn't protecting our future. He was burying his past. When I got home, the place I called home felt desecrated. Every object, every photograph on the wall, every piece of furniture we chose together seemed like a prop on the stage of his grand play. I was the lead actress and the only person in the audience who didn't know the script. I didn't cry. Tears felt like a luxury, an emotion too mild for the magnitude of the betrayal. What I felt was a cold, sharp anger that settled in my chest. I sat on the living room sofa, without turning on the lights, and waited. The sun set, and the house plunged into shadow, but I didn't move. I was no longer the confused, heartbroken wife. I was a judge waiting to hear the defendant's plea, though I already knew the verdict. Finally, I heard the familiar sound of keys in the lock. The sound that once brought me comfort now sounded like the creaking of hell's gates. The door opened. Michael came in, holding paper bags with our favorite dinner, a tired smile on his face. "Hi, honey. I'm home. Traffic was awful," he said, the normality in his voice an offense. He stopped in the middle of the room, finally noticing the darkness and my silence. His brow furrowed in confusion. "Clara? Is everything okay? Why are you in the dark?" He took a step toward me, and that's when I spoke. My voice didn't waver. It came out dangerously calm, cutting through the silence like a shard of glass. "I saw Sarah today." Her name hung in the air between us, dense and heavy. Michael's smile froze and then vanished. The color drained from his face, the same panic I saw in Sarah now mirrored in his eyes. He knew in that instant that the show was over. The silence that settled in the room was heavier than any scream. Michael stood frozen, the bags of food forgotten in his hands, his face a whirlwind of emotions, shock, denial, and finally, the abject terror of a man who knows he's been caught. He opened his mouth to speak, probably to weave another lie, but I cut him off, my voice still dangerously calm. "Don't bother denying it, Michael. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. The month you were away on business, the job you lost, our new life in Seattle, every excuse, every story. It was all to cover this up, wasn't it? To cover up the fact that you're a thief." The word thief left my mouth and seemed to suck all the air out of the room. He faltered. The bags dropped to the floor with a dull thud. He took a step forward, his hands raised in a pleading gesture. "Clara, listen to me. It's not that simple. I was going to tell you. I swear I was." Tell me what? I challenged him, rising from the sofa. For the first time, he flinched back. The power in our relationship had definitively shifted. That you were arrested? That you stole $500,000 from your boss? That the reason our best friends disappeared was because they saw the man they knew being treated like a criminal on TV? Each question was a stab, and I saw the pain on his face, but I felt no pity. I felt only a cold emptiness. It was then that he collapsed, not into tears of remorse, but into a desperate stream of justifications. Yes, all of it, he admitted, his voice choked. But it wasn't like that. My boss, Mr. Henderson, he was a good man. He saw I was young, that I made a terrible mistake. He dropped the charges before it went to trial, on the condition that I pay back every single cent and disappear from his life. He gave me a second chance, Clara. A chance not to have a criminal record, to be able to continue my life. To be able to continue my life with you. He looked at me with pleading eyes, hoping I would see his act as proof of love, a fight to preserve our future. But all I saw was the depth of his deception. You didn't do this for me, I said, my voice low but firm. You did this for you, because you got caught. If you hadn't been, would you have stopped? His silence was the loudest answer he could have given me. The final truth settled over me, crushing and liberating at the same time. The man I loved never existed. He was a facade, a character Michael created to get what he wanted. And I, with my open heart and my blind trust, was the perfect target. The pain was immense, but beneath it, a strange strength began to grow. The strength of clarity. Without another word, I turned my back on him and walked toward our bedroom. Each step was heavy, as if I were walking on the ocean floor. I started taking clothes from the closet, folding them methodically and placing them in a suitcase. He followed me, his voice now a desperate lament. Clara, don't do this. Please. I love you. We can fix this. I'll change, I swear. I'll do whatever you want. He tried to grab my arm, but I pulled away as if his touch burned. The suitcase was zipped shut. I looked at him one last time, not with anger, but with a deep and final sadness. The problem, Michael, was never just the money. The problem is that I look at you now, and I don't know who you are. The man I married, the man I built a life with, was a lie, and I cannot, and will not, spend another day of my life sleeping next to a stranger. I picked up my purse and the suitcase and walked toward the front door, passing him as if he were a ghost. I opened the door, and the cool night air felt like the first breath of freedom I had felt in years. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away from that house, away from that man, away from the ruins of the life I thought was mine. I had nowhere to go, but for the first time in 3 years, I knew I was heading in the right direction, away from the lie. If this story moved and shocked you, don't keep it to yourself. Help our channel grow. Hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss any new stories, and turn on notifications to be the first to watch. And let me know in the comments below what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. See you in the next video.